Okay, so the first thing I want to get out of the way is that the titular Mandalorian of the show was clearly Grogu. That was always going to be the bait and switch. He's a foundling, he's become a Mandalorian. The whole show revolves around Din passing on what he's learned. Grogu is the Mandalorian, except you f***ed it. You f***ed it because now that clearly can't work if the title of the movie is The Mandalorian and Grogu.
You fucking idiot, Jeremy! You total fucking idiot! That was your job, you fucking moron!
Grogu and Grogu?
Was finishing
Step
talking
out.
to Marcus and
Step out.
Okay, I'm gonna talk to Marcus.
Now
I'll
get the
order
fuck off my Xbox!
The announcement of the Mandalorian movie can mean only one thing. Star Wars is on its knees. With a gluttony of underperforming streaming shows released and on the horizon, with one notable exception, alongside a bevy of cancelled Star Wars movies, including the Kevin Feige movie, the Patty Jenkins Rogue Squadron movie, the Taika Waititi movie, the Game of Thrones fellas movie, the Rian Johnson trilogy, as well as countless other variants of things we did get, including the Boba Fett movie by Josh Trank or James Mangold, the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie trilogy, the original Lord and Miller solo movie, and probably even loads of other things that weren't incredibly announced yet. The franchise last year turned to 3 directors and 3 pitches for the future of theatrical, and even they have seemingly been pushed aside whilst this has been rushed into production. Lucasfilm made a huge deal out of the Rey movie, the biblical epic movie, and the Avengers Mandoverse movie, and now all of those will presumably come out after this Grogu movie, which is being fast-tracked, filming this year for presumably a late 2025 to early 2026 release. Just about everything in the Star Wars world is getting a tepid mixed reaction at the moment, with even the last season of The Mandalorian coming out of a whimper rather than the bang of the first 2 seasons. In the wake of the declining interest for the franchise, Lucasfilm have decided in a very calculated move to transform the next season of The Mandalorian into a film instead. Favreau previously admitted that every episode of Season 4 was written, which means that this must at least be taking the place of that iteration of a potential 4th series, if one ever happens now. Lucasfilm have literally cannibalised a flailing show on a streamer in the hopes it will find new life in the cinema and coax fans back. It speaks to the state of the streaming wars, the state of Star Wars' direction, and the desperation behind the powers that be, all the way to the very top of Mouse leadership, to turn things around. Could the Mandalorian movie be a step in the right direction? Well, of course, there's pros and cons. But before I get to all that, I want to talk about today's sponsor, Raycon. Raycon very kindly sent me these awesome everyday earbuds to try out. I really like going wireless, it's super convenient when on the move, I listen to a lot of podcasts, cycling and whatnot, and I have to say, these are definitely the very best brand of earbuds I've used. They feel great to wear, have great audio quality, and they look sleek. Sometimes these kinds of products can fall out of my ears really easily, but with these optimised gel tips you can get the perfect in-ear fit. They simply will not budge. Trust me, daddy! The everyday earbuds offer 8 hours of playtime and a 32-hour battery life. They're also water and sweat resistant, which is great if you want to listen to things on a 5K or other forms of exercise. The call quality is also crystal clear, making taking a phone call with these buds a breeze. By the way, I hope you're enjoying all of my modelling footage of these buds. Raycons are priced just right. You get quality audio at half the price of other premium audio brands. There's really no reason not to invest in a pair of these. I know in today's world everyone uses music, podcasts and videos, and if you haven't gone wireless yet, it's about time. Go to buyraycon.com/fullfat for 15% off your order, plus get free domestic or flat fee international shipping. Brought to you by Raycon. Pro. This could solve The Mandalorian the show's biggest problem. Even during the relative highs of season 1 and 2, there was no denying the show had a filler problem. For every episode that moved the plot forward, there were 2 episodes dedicated to Mando fixing a part of his ship. It kind of reminds me of the first Dead Space and by extension the remake, where you're constantly having to backtrack and fix something before you can move forward. Only difference is that that's fun because you're playing it. Watching Mando shoot some dudes loses its luster fast when there's no substantial plotting. You could easily cut episodes like the Spider Cave, cool as some of it is, and lose nothing story-wise. I've often made the point that the Marvel streaming shows would have made better condensed 2-hour movies, and whilst Mando hasn't suffered quite as much, there's no denying every season could have been 5 episodes apiece and still delivered all the key moments. With episodes sometimes clocking in around half an hour, it's not hard to see a Mando movie making far better use of its time. If it's a premiere Star Wars movie, it's probably going to run over 2 hours and just shy of 2.5. I'd say it's probably going to be about 4 to 5 episodes worth of storytelling. Of course, the structure will be markedly different, but if it means the side quests are axed in favour of a more focused story, then that could be great. Think of the best fight scenes and set pieces across the show jam-packed into something leaner that doesn't drop the ball on the story so much. Con. There's a real danger this movie could look really TV. The use of volume on The Mandalorian went from being a really cool new tech innovation to being ridiculously overused. It became a parody of what it was in that first season. Even The Rise of Skywalker, a terrible movie, looks competent. It has scale to it, the worlds are well realised, and it looks epic. Keyword, looks. The Mandalorian and Grogu adventure on the big screen needs to feel like the budget for a whole series has been funneled into 2 hours. I want to see an abundance of real locations, and I want this to feel like the most epic and awesome story you've ever seen with these characters. The decision to transfer to theatrical needs to give the audience more bang for their buck. It can't just feel like a calculated financial decision for Disney. The thing that would really allay my fears regarding the whole look of this would be bringing back Greg Fraser as DP. He is the volume GOAT.
Is the GOAT! The GOAT!
Having used it to great effect in The Mandalorian when the tech was first being unveiled, and then again in The Batman. He really gets how important the lighting is to make the volume work, and outside of that he was the DOP for one of the best looking Star Wars movies ever in Rogue One, the aforementioned Batman, which was considered the best looking movie of 2022 by legend DOP Roger Deakins, and Fraser's work in pictures like Killing Them Softly and Let the Right One In speaks for itself. Having Fraser on board for this, coupled with the idea that it could be a leaner, more focused Mando story, could really work. Pro. Jon Favreau still knows what he's doing, when he can be bothered. I think Favreau knows when to phone it in and when not to. When The Mandalorian first came out, it was alongside the sequel trilogy threequel that killed the theatrical side ever since, and it was the first of the franchise to go to streaming. It was the first big budget live action Star Wars show, and a lot was resting on it. And for the most part, it delivered. But ever since then the show has gotten lazier and lazier after reaching peak popularity, and other Star Wars shows have come out. Disney is feeling the squeeze with their Marvel properties, and that came to a head with the box office bomb that was the Marvels last year. They don't want to repeat with Star Wars.
Strong theory.
Picking this popular duo and putting it on Favreau's shoulders could mean we're going to get something closer to his work with Mando Season 1, or even the gold standard, the first Iron Man.
Yeah, I can fly.
The comparisons to the way Favreau has depicted those Beskar suits in relation to Stark's armour has been obvious. It would be great if he could channel what made the first movie so good into this one. After a stinker like The Lion King, Favreau needs to deliver. He is hoping it can be the best thing he's made in a decade since Chef. Holy balls, Chef was a decade ago?
Ho!
Con. It could play it super safe. After countless times Disney has gone in the wrong direction, it feels deeply cynical to take this duo and put them back in the cinema. Disney Plus has not been the golden goose they wanted it to be, and a major rethink is clearly on the cards for the future of Star Wars. The fact this is being turned around so quickly speaks volumes. Netflix has come out on top in the streaming wars. Against all the odds, everybody else is tanking, and only Apple and Amazon can weather those costs. Disney Plus has watered down the brand by seeing an inundated amount of Marvel and Star Wars shows clogging up the platform, leading to apathy for these worlds and what comes next. I guess at the very least, this is probably the Star Wars movie that has the most chance to be watchable. When Favreau pulls his finger out, he can deliver, and it's starring 2 very popular and much loved characters, born out of the franchise's most maligned era. I love James Mangold, but the pitch for his biblical epic Star Wars sounds so off base and boring, to be frank. Who is asking for this? Who wants to hear about the origins of the Force? And after Dial of Destiny, I have little faith that he'll be able to have a voice amongst the corporate machine. Hard pass. The Rey movie is an offshoot of The Rise of Skywalker, which destroyed that entire side of things. It feels way too early to do the Rey nostalgia tour, and it doesn't look like her boo is coming back, nor any of her other companions. It feels like episode 10, but in the softest, safest sense. If you want to do this, you should wait 15 years, honestly, for the kids who liked the sequels to have disposable incomes. Hard pass. Dave Filoni's Avengers-style movie has the biggest chance of happening, but that doesn't make it good. He's proven himself in animation, live-action TV is up for debate, and there's nothing to suggest he can micromanage a huge tentpole release. I'm personally not very interested in seeing a lesser version of Timothy Zahn's work, co-starring the Skeleton Crew and putty Luke Skywalker. If they announce flesh and blood actors for the big 3, then my interest could creep. Con. it could just be a rehash of the show. I don't want this to simply be Mando Season 4 squished down. I want it to feel like an essential chapter in the Mandalorian and Grogu story. Also, much like Iron Man, leave the world building to a minimum. I don't need it to be chock full of cameos and be setting up the Filoni team-up movie. Set that movie up by positioning our characters in an interesting place through well-told arcs. I've seen too many tough guys with kids now. Move it along. Take Din and Grogu somewhere else. The Baby Yoda thing is well past its sell-by date. We've seen enough of that. It's played out. It's done. What I was saying at the start of this video about the Mandalorian of the title being Grogu, maybe it's time. Grogu is well over 50 at this point, and we know Yoda lived for many hundreds of years. The thing holding this character back is the fact that he seems confined to being an infant for the entire show. But Yoda and Grogu are aliens we know nothing about, and being a baby for 50 years is obviously very different to how the humans of the galaxy progress already. What if they go from being babies to adults very quickly, in a process that occurs very much like puberty? They're babies for way longer than us, but they do puberty quick time. What if the movie is about Din watching Grogu very rapidly transform into an adult of his species? Din is wrestling with the fact that he's no longer his baby boy, and Grogu has to adapt and take on this challenge of finally becoming who he has been destined to become. If he knows who or what that is. It's a trial by fire with a completely new movie-specific threat and villain, foregoing any callbacks to any of the Mandoverse shows in favour of dialing in on what makes this dynamic special. No Snoke setup, we don't care, we don't need it. And I think with Grogu becoming an adult, it should be existential for them both. Din has a human lifespan, Grogu will outlive him for hundreds of years. Ultimately, Din's life could seem like a footnote in Grogu's.
You can spend the rest of your life with me, but I can't spend the rest of mine with you.
But of course, that isn't going to be the case, even if he does outlive him. What if part of their arcs are about accepting that and cherishing the time in the now as Grogu steps up and becomes this more Yoda-like figure, except he's a Force-sensitive Mandalorian rather than a Jedi who talks in riddles. I'd even go as far as to kill off Din at the end of this. I know that's not going to be popular, but make this movie matter. Make it the essential final chapter in their joint story. Learn to let go. Give us an epic final stand with Din, and let's see Grogu inherit the armour and take up the namesake of the series. He is the Mandalorian. The adult version of the character could be a key figure in not only the Filoni movie, but Rey's New Jedi Order movie. If the character lives for close to 1,000 years, the franchise is begging to use him across multiple time periods. All in all, this could be a turning point for Star Wars. We could finally get a feature that puts story first, something that unites rather than divides the fan base, with decent action and a smaller story that is less about interconnectivity and more about character. Or it could be the next awful Star Wars thing in a long line of awful Star Wars things, and it could kill its theatrical potential for another 7 years. If these films don't start delivering, then it's safe to say the franchise needs to go away for a while. Recapture that magic from almost 9 years ago. Holy balls, Force Awakens was almost 9 years ago?
Ho!
What do you think? Are you excited for the Mandalorian movie? Is this the most hyped you've been for the wars in quite some time? Or like me, has it been a corpse going through the motions after too many bad outings? Can anything save the franchise at this point, or is it time for the Disney era to end? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, if you like classic Star Wars, why not check out my lightsaber duel videos? A big thank you to my full fat tier patron, Dr. Chike, and Nathan Shaw. If you'd like to donate money to my Patreon, you can find me at patreon.com/fullfatvideos. If you'd like to find me on Instagram, you can find me at full_fat_videos. And if you'd like to find me on Twitter, you can find me at fullfatvideos.